25 toxic lies that built your favorite fast fashion brand. The river looked normal until you touched it. Blue dye slicked across your skin like oil. A woman on the bank pointed to a rash on her arm and said it never fades. Meanwhile, a man at a landfill in Accra climbed a mountain of damp clothes that slid like quicksand. In a warehouse, workers stitched through the night for pennies per piece. And you scored a $5 tea you'll forget next month. Who's paying what here? Your wallet, closet, and conscience are in the crossfire. To understand the 25 lies, we need to rewind to the moment cheap became the baseline. The origin story, how cheap became normal. 3 switches flipped almost at once. First, trade rules loosened. After the multi-fiber arrangement ended in 2005, the quota walls fell and production didn't just move, it multiplied. Brands sprinted toward the lowest wages, shifting orders across borders like chess pieces. Second, the smartphone turned every idle minute into a store aisle. Third, retailers discovered cadence as a weapon. Weekly, then daily drops trained us to expect new on tap. Price wasn't just lower, behavior was rewired. To understand why, follow the incentives. When quotas disappeared, governments competed for orders, factories shaved margins, and safety slipped down the checklist. Brands framed this as efficiency, lean, agile, responsive. Workers felt it as days that never ended and pay that never caught up. The distance between the logo and the sewing line became a profit strategy. Speed became the product. Scarcity was no longer about craftsmanship, it was about timing. If novelty arrives every few days, quality can quietly step aside. Buy now, wear twice, move on. Retail math cemented the rhythm. Overproduction wasn't a mistake, it was policy. Flood the floor, price for markdowns, and let the red tag teach shoppers to feel rescued. You think you won. The retailer won first. Logistics locked in the tempo. Container shipping shaved pennies per piece. Just-in-time planning shortened inventory windows so stores could refresh without parking cash in stock. But JIT has a shadow cost. Any delay pushes pressure upstream onto mills, dye houses, and sewing lines. Turnarounds shrink, corners get shaved, and risks get exported to places you'll never see. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Affordability was sold as empowerment. Everyone deserves style. True, until the model depends on disappointment. The garment that thrills at checkout and sags by wash 3 is a feature, not a bug. That let the dopamine do the heavy lifting. Apps gamified urgency with flash sales, countdowns, only 3 left, and push pings tuned to loss aversion and FOMO. The more you scrolled, the more the system learned your tells and served micro-trends that expired in days. On your screen, it looked seamless. On the line, it looked like exhaustion. A celebrity wore something Monday. By Friday, a replica hit the homepage. Patterns were digitized, sent to whoever had capacity, and slotted into air and sea corridors like clockwork. The magic wasn't design, it was orchestration. Copy fast, price below pain, and move before the mood turned. While that was happening in New York and London, upstream in spinning mills and dye houses, another clock ticked. Rush orders narrowed the window for checks and maintenance. Wastewater treatment takes time and money. When schedules compress, tanks become later, and later often means the river. The same cadence that fed your feed strained the systems meant to keep color out of well. Offshoring wasn't just about wages, it was about risk. By buying from independent factories, brands kept legal liability at arm's length. Codes of conduct looked noble on websites, enforcement lived continents away. If a problem surfaced, contracts ended faster than conditions improved. The system rewarded distance while marketing promised closeness. We hear you, we care, we're conscious. Then came discount theater. Anchor a high, compare at price, then slice it to feel like a win. Over time, the sale became the default and expectations fell with it. If it's that cheap, why expect it to last? Standards slid to meet the floor and the floor kept dropping. A micro story played out millions of times. A student grabbed a $12 party dress, returned it within the free window, and felt responsible. The dress bounced across warehouses, too cheap to reprocess, then got liquidated by the pallet. After sorting abroad, it ended up in an open dump where rain turned fabric into sludge. That dress traveled more miles after purchase than the student did all year. Meanwhile, the industry celebrated itself. Faster design, smarter logistics, democratized style. The unmentioned tab landed in rivers, landfills, and pay envelopes that didn't cover rent. Externalities didn't vanish, they migrated. The final click was psychological. When a $5 tea feels normal, everything else looks like a gouge. The low anchor trains the eye, the ear, and the hand at checkout. Disappointment stops mattering if the dopamine hit is cheap enough. That's how cheap became normal, by loosening rules, leaning on distance, calibrating dopamine, and calling it innovation. Lies 1 to 3. The Price Lie Trilogy. Lie 1 starts where the dopamine lands. It's cheap because it's efficient. The story sounds airtight: automated cutting, global freight at scale, software that forecasts to the unit. But the ledger you see isn't the ledger that matters. Costs didn't vanish, they slid sideways. Wastewater treatment skipped to make a truck. Overtime unpaid because the order turned urgent. Packaging, returns, and disposal absorbed by cities that never saw the ad. Medical bills absorbed by families downriver from dye houses. Efficiency for whom? The brand's spreadsheet shows a win, the neighborhood shows the rash. Stakes show up on a Friday night call. A manager in Turapur hears double the run, ship Tuesday. He flips the line to nights and switches from hourly pay to per piece. The dye house next door runs vats hot and bypasses treatment because the tank's full and the hauler's late. Downstream, women draw water and feel the sting on their hands. On a dashboard, a buyer logs cost saved. The river logs color. Action scales because the model demands it. Just-in-time tightens buffers, so every hiccup turns into human speed. When a zipper spec gets downgraded to make the timeline, nobody writes we shifted risk to the customer's third wash. When a plant delays needle changes to keep uptime, nobody inputs we traded safety for minutes. Those trades stack into the price you cheer at checkout. Impact is quiet and broad. Municipalities handle returns waste that's priced too low to process. Ports handle bales of resale that flood markets overseas. Clinics treat dermatitis and coughs near mills that sprint through peak season. The spreadsheet never meets those bills. You do later elsewhere, informs the checkout page can't show. Lie 2 smiles while it lifts. We pass savings to you. Partly true, selectively framed. Yes, prices fell on the rack, but the gap didn't flow straight into your pocket. It split some to you, a lot to margins, plenty to marketing that makes the deal feel inevitable. Executives earn on unit volume, buybacks ride the spread. Efficiency gains becomes the song of the quarter. Listen to earnings calls after a discount-heavy season. You'll hear mix, leverage, optimization. You won't hear, we gave it all back. Stakes hit suppliers first. Payment terms stretch to 60 or 90 days, so factories bankroll production while paying workers weekly. Post-delivery, brands claim quality deductions on tiny defects. The factory eats it or loses the next order. Meanwhile, raw material volatility lives at the mill. Cotton spikes. The supplier absorbs the shock, the brand defers. Savings is a pressure gradient that always tilts down. Action looks like a line leader calculating rent in seam minutes. She chases quota because an efficiency bonus could cover rice. If a shipment leaves late, the brand deducts from the invoice. Management recoups by trimming bonuses. Wage theft hides inside performance. On paper, everything stays neat. On the floor, people skip dinner. Impact rolls into your habits. A $5 tea anchors expectations. If a better-made piece costs $30, it feels like an insult. That anchor drags quality down across the market because matching the floor is safer than defending the ceiling. Savings became gravity. Standards fell to meet it. Lie 3 is the velvet rope. Sales are a gift. The red tag looks like mercy, but it's theater. Retailers set a high, compare at price to make the markdown feel like a rescue. The garment was costed for the sale from day one. You're not getting a last-minute break. You're participating in choreography designed to move volume and harvest data. Stakes land on behavior. If everything's always on promo, delay becomes a sport. You wait for 30% off, then 40, then the extra code at midnight. The brand wants that game. It teaches you to accept a lower baseline and come back often. The dopamine comes from the win, not the garment. And when the piece washes out early, the disappointment gets filed under expected at the price. Action behind the curtain is inventory as performance. Overorder to flood the floor. Price for markdown so gross margin holds. Use A/B tests to learn which urgency copy converts. Move the slow movers into bundles. Bury them under new tiles. Treat early units as marketing to spark the trend, then lean into the curve. If returns spike, relabel and reroute to a different marketplace, a different promise. Impact is logistical churn. Returns cost more to recondition than the garment's worth, so pallets flow to liquidators and export bales. Thrift stores skim the good, the rest becomes someone else's storm-clogged drain. The store reports record traffic. You feel like you hacked the system. The river never entered the chat. A micro scene makes it plain. A cashier rings up a tea at 5 during a today-only flash. A teen beams like they've outsmarted retail. In the back, a box cutter opens more of the same teas because abundance is required to keep the rush alive. The young shopper leaves feeling clever. The line leader counts stitches. The dye house opens a valve. So what did the $5 tea really cost? Start at a field in a water-stressed basin. Add pesticides that linger in soil and bodies. Spin in a mill where dust rides the air. Dye with recipes that only work when time and treatment hold. Cut and sew under quotas that swap hours for pieces. Wrap in plastic. Ship across oceans. Truck to a warehouse. Ping a phone. Each step shaves cents by shifting risk and pushing consequences down the line. Follow one impulse buy from cart to burial. It arrives thin, twists after a wash, and returns for free. The system logs your size, your linger time, and your color bias. Your box might restock, but odds say it's too cheap to process. It's auctioned by weight, baled by type, and shipped to a market where sellers take loans to gamble on your brand's leftovers. The sellable pieces find bodies. The rest finds rain. The price wasn't a miracle. It was a map of who pays. Lies 4 to 6. Quality theater. If price is the trick, product is the stagecraft. Lie 4 hides in the tag, premium fabric. It feels soft in your hand, drapes well in the mirror, and the hang tag whispers modal, silky, buttery. Softness, though, isn't durability. Mills hit that day one hand feel with short staple cotton, regenerated fibers and heavy finishing, enzymes to smooth, silicone to slick, brushed surfaces to fake plush. Low twist yarns make teas feel luxe and then pill after a backpack rub. Saturated dyes pop on camera and then bleed in your sink. The fabric passes the mirror test, not the life test. Here, why it matters. A mother buys 3 premium basics for school uniforms, counting on 30 washes. By October, elbows thin, collars ripple, and navy fades to a tired gray. That's not a vibe problem, it's a budget problem. Replacement becomes a subscription you never asked for. The disappointment is engineered and monetized. Action in the supply chain looks precise. Pattern teams target a hand feel. Sourcing hunts a blend that hits cost. Mills apply finishes that mask a looser structure. Factories stitch to a spec tuned for speed. It all complies with an internal threshold, a 5-wash protocol, a minimum rub count that sounds scientific and manages expectations downward. The lab proves compliance with a line the brand drew. Your life draws a different line. Impact lands in churn. You get a hit of novelty at purchase, a small letdown after wash 2, and a choice at wash 5. Return, tolerate, or replace. Returns are often too cheap to restock, so they join the liquidation stream. Replacements keep the unit count moving. Quality theater turns disappointment into demand. Lie 5 shows up in the lab coat, tested for durability. The diagrams look convincing. Abrasion wheels, stretch meters, color-fast racks. The tests happen. The trick is thresholds. Buttons pass a tensile pull but crack under real-world stress when thread counts are cut. Zippers meet spec in isolation and fail when tape is narrowed to save cents. Seams hold on a test strip and unravel in motion when stitch density drops and bar tacks disappear to shave minute. Stakes are real bodies. A warehouse picker runs 12 miles a day in performance leggings that aced a stretch test. Week 3, the crotch seam unravels because stitch length was extended to save thread and the operator skipped a second pass to meet quota. She buys another pair because the job demands it. Failure becomes a weekly tax on the lowest paid. Action is a spreadsheet of micro savings. Seam allowances shrink to improve fabric yield. Interlinings get downgraded so collars wilt earlier. Pocketing fabric is trimmed to the minimum so bags blow out under a phone's weight. A garment engineered for 5 to 10 wears fits the revenue cadence and clears the lab. That's the quiet math. Durability shaved just below the point where you'll complain loudly and just above the point where you'll come back quietly. Impact ripples past your closet. Flimsy garments shed microfibers faster, sending plastic threads into pumps and pipes that treatment plants don't catch well. Returns multiply, creating logistics with an emissions footprint of their own. The brand's quality claim remains technically true. The lived reality is a drawer that feels disposable. Lie 6 sits in the fitting room, true to size. The promise suggests standardization. Production reality is variance. Patterns are graded to maximize yield on the marker, the nested outlines that decide how many pieces fit per roll. Shift hip ease by a few millimeters and you squeeze another body front from a bolt. The result is a medium that fits like last year's small and a large that swings generous in one batch, stingy in the next. Across subcontractors, blocks drift because software, tables, and tolerances differ. True to size becomes whatever the week's fabric efficiency allowed. Stakes land on confidence and cost. A shopper orders 3 sizes of the same skirt and keeps none. She blames her body for not fitting a system tuned for yield, not fit. Free returns feel like kindness and function like data mining, feeding the algorithm while normalizing roulette. Her sense of self drops a notch. Her buy rate stays steady. Action in cutting rooms is relentless. Pattern makers get told to respect the block and improve yield. Darts move to save sewing time. Pocket shapes simplify. Vanity sizing lifts the ego a moment. Labels drift upward so you feel smaller in the mirror, but internal tolerances shrink to pump more pieces per roll. In parallel, subcontractors grade the same style differently to hit local fabric widths. Quality control catches disasters. It waves through with intolerance. Impact multiplies quickly. Fit chaos drives multi-size orders, inflating front-end volume and back-end returns. Low-grade construction means those extras fail sooner. The return pipeline overflows with goods too cheap to repair, too inconsistent to restock. And every disappointment is smoothed with language, premium, tested, true to size, that keeps you inside the story. A 20-second micro-story makes it concrete. A designer approves a blouse sample with French seams, crisp collar, anchored buttons. Production gets simplified at a satellite factory. Overlock seams, a thinner fused interlining, 2-hole buttons with fewer stitches. The photo online shows the sample. The box at your door holds the optimized version. On wear 3, the collar curls. You assume you washed it wrong. Quality theater doesn't just sell the garment, it sells the next one. It turns shortcuts into charm, failures into expected at this price, and variance into your problem. The stage looks premium. The script is built to exit early. Lies 7 to 9. The Greenwashing Playbook. To soothe flimsy clothes and fast returns, they handed out halos. Lie 7 begins on a splash page. Conscious, join the loop, planet-friendly. A model in moss green stands by a waterfall. The copy promises a gentler future. The stakes are your values, you want to do less harm. The action is curation. A tiny capsule, often a fraction of a percent of overall output, gets 100% of the spotlight. Maybe it uses certified cotton, maybe recycled trim. The rest of the catalog keeps sprinting. The campaign implies a pivot. The production schedule proves momentum. Here, what that looks like behind the page. A merchandising team carves out a 50,000-unit responsible capsule while approving a 5 million unit mainline for the same quarter. The capsule gets audits, traceable buttons, a press release, and an influencer tour of a flagship factory. Unknown to them across town, subcontractors work late to finish core SKUs that will hit the same launch window. The creator's footage is sincere. The floor they saw was clean. Scale just didn't make the cut. Impact is psychological first, material second. The halo spreads. A viewer buys 1 conscious tee and 3 non-capsule pieces because they're right there on the page. Totals in the sustainability report climb. Tons of better cotton, trees planted, workers reached by training. What's missing are intensities. Liters per kilogram, kilograms of coatweave per garment, verified wages versus local living benchmarks. Without per item math and volume caps, the color of the hang tag doesn't matter. You can't offset scale with adjectives. Lie 8 turns recycled into a magic word. The stakes are hope. You want your purchase to be part of a fix. The tag says recycled, and technically it often is. A percentage of polyester from bottles spun into yarn. The action hides the loop. Bottle-to-fiber pulls material out of bottle-to-bottle systems that actually work at scale. The garment blend, say 15% recycled polyester, 85% virgin, a touch of elastane, looks good on a label and bad at end of life. Fiber-to-fiber recycling for blended textiles is still limited, expensive, and rare. You bought recycled, not circular. A micro-story sits in a return bin. A shopper drops a sack of old tees into a close-the-loop box and gets a coupon. The bag heads to a sorter. Buttons, zippers, stains, and blends kill fiber-to-fiber for most items. Some become wiping rags, some downcycle into insulation. Many get baled and exported to markets already flooded. The coupon worked. The loop widened into someone else's backyard. Impact shows up in landscapes that became evidence. In Chile's Atacama Desert, dunes of unsold and second-hand imports lie exposed, leaching dyes and microfibers into wind and sand. In Ghana's Accra, traders at Cantamanto Market take loans to buy bales. A third is sellable, a chunk mendable, a large remainder unsellable. That remainder slumps into drains, fuels open burns, or smolders in dumps after rain. If recycling were scaling, those piles would shrink. They're growing. Line 9 wraps itself in math, carbon-neutral shipping. The stakes are global. The claim feels like relief. The action is offsets. Pay for tree planting, forest projects, or methane capture somewhere else to balance a plane, a truck, a warehouse. Offsets can fund good work, but when they lead the sentence, they excuse the hard part, cutting actual emissions from operations and logistics. Regulators in Europe and courts in the US have started pushing back on neutrality claims built on paper credits while emissions rise. Neutral on checkout isn't neutral in the air. Walk through a warehouse. Orders spike. Next day becomes baseline. Partial boxes fly because the algorithm prefers speed over consolidation. Each split shipment doubles packaging and miles. The offset lands later as a graphic of trees. The sorter still pulls plastic film from the stream. The truck still idles at the dock. The fuel burn still happens. Offsets don't fix the cadence that caused it. Certification gets drafted into this theater. Badges stack at the footer. Farm-level standards, organic content claims, management systems at a mill. Some are meaningful in scope. Others certify a narrow slice that looks broad at a glance. The test is transparency with teeth. Can you see Tier 2, 3, and 4 suppliers? Do they publish restricted substance lists, effluent tests, basin-level water reporting, wage benchmarks by role and region? Is there a plan to cut absolute emissions with dates and budgets, not just to buy offsets? Without that, the badge is wardrobe. There's a 20-second human beat that lingers. A buyer greenlights a responsible capsule in the morning, linen blends, recycled hang tags, earthy palette, and signs off on 3,000 more units of a trend dress in the afternoon because dashboards spike. She's proud. She's also on deadline. The press release will feature the capsule. The warehouse will feel the palette. So how do you spot the playbook? Watch for big promises without dates, totals without intensities, recycled without end-of-life plans, neutrality built on offsets before cuts, and certifications used as shields instead of windows. Then ask for receipts, per item footprints that fall year over year, volume caps that bite, disclosed supplier tiers beyond cut and sew, wastewater tests you can read without a chaperone, wage verification tied to local living benchmark. If the answers don't include numbers and consequences, the green is a filter, not a foundation. Lies 10 to 12. Water, chemicals, and the dye job. To follow the sheen on a new shirt, we need to follow the water. Lie 10 starts with soothing phrases. Water like cotton, low-water denim, responsible wash. The stakes are basic. Household taps, farm wells, and rivers that carry a city's life. Cotton thirst depends on where it grows. In arid basins, irrigation drains aquifers. Then mills step in, scouring, bleaching, dyeing, rinsing, softening. Each step demands water. Low water can be true for one stage while the total stays heavy. The label shrinks a slice. The basin still pays. Action on a Tuesday in a denim hub. A mill primes a run, scour to strip waxes, bleach to brighten, dip after dip to build indigo, rinse to set, enzyme wash for softness, then finishing so it feels good on day one. On the brand site, a batch touts an eco-washer that saves liters per pair. Inside the plant, that machine helps, but pre- and post-bath still fill tanks. When orders surge, treatment lines struggle. If membranes foul or an evaporator lags, operators make a choice between delay and discharge. A valve turns. Effluent slips into a canal carrying salts, surfactants, alkalis, and residual dyes. Impact hits neighbors first. Wells go brackish. Skin burns after dishwater. The monsoon's first flush turns canals electric, then fish float belly up as chemical oxygen demand spikes. A low-water wash sold a narrow truth while ignoring the whole journey. If the goal is harm cut, you need basin-level math, liters per kilogram of fabric, not a single shiny step. Lie 11 arrives wearing a lab coat. Clean dyes, safer finishes. Chemistry got better in places. Many mills phased out the worst azo dyes that can form carcinogenic amines. But garments still rely on problem classes, formaldehyde-based resins to keep shirts wrinkle-free, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances to repel stains and water, heavy metal mordants for certain colors, softeners that persist. A hang tag can spotlight one fix while the rest stays put. Walk the dye room. Operators track temperature and pH to hit shade and fastness. A last-minute call asks for a deeper black. The foreman swaps in a high-fixation dye and a cationic aftertreatment to rescue the batch. Fabric exits perfect, passes a dry rub test, ships. What didn't bind heads to wastewater? If the treatment line runs, coagulation, flocculation, aeration, filtration, loads drop. If the line is overwhelmed, compounds travel. Workers feel headaches, dermatitis, coughs. Nearby families get rashes and odd-tasting water. Clinics treat symptoms without tracing causes to recipes. Impact ripples far. PFAS resist breakdown and accumulate. Salts change soil structure. Poorly treated liquor depletes oxygen and suffocates aquatic life. Clean should mean clean systems, published restricted substance lists, disclose suppliers beyond cut and sew, independent effluent tests rather than one safer molecule. When brands claim safety without showing chemistry and discharge, clean becomes a mood. Lie 12 promises engineering salvation. Closed loop, zero liquid discharge. The tech is real when built and maintained. Membranes that filter, evaporators that recover water, sludge presses that capture solids, especially in regions with strict rules or serious water stress. The action falters under pressure. A factory installs ZLD for a photo and a certificate. A year later, energy bills bite, spare parts delay, membranes foul, and peak season pushes volume past design. Night shifts meet truck schedules. Valves open to a canal that never saw the press release. Meanwhile, municipal systems in textile towns weren't built to handle industrial load. Household plants get fed die-house effluent overnight because it's cheaper than running a full private line. On paper, compliance looks fine. Discharge permits set limits per liter. In practice, total volume tells the story. A giant mill recycling 80% of water can still release more pollutants in aggregate than a smaller neighbor because overall output dwarfs the limits frame. There's a human moment that strips the branding. A farmer stands by a borewell near a cluster of dye houses. He fills a glass, sniffs, winces. He once irrigated spinach. Now he buys trucked water for his family and grows less. He holds up a plastic bottle of canal water. The tint is faint but wrong. He doesn't care about acronyms. He cares that his granddaughter's skin burns after a bath. Impact doesn't stop at the plant gate. At home, washing sheds microfibers that pass through treatment and enter rivers and seas. Synthetic blends drop invisible threads with every cycle. Filters catch some, most slip by. The same garment that stressed a basin upstream keeps releasing downstream. Water carries fashion twice. So how do you spot signal? Look for disclosed water intensity per kilogram of fabric, not a single machine savings. Look for a public restricted substance list aligned with strong standards, third-party discharge tests with chemical oxygen demand, conductivity, and pH posted, and supplier maps that include spinning, dyeing, and finishing. Ask to see treatment running in peak season, not on tour day. Real loops last through August rush. Real clean shows chemistry and numbers. Glossy words don't hold water. Proof does. Lies 13 to 15. The landfill illusion. Lie 13 sounds generous. We donate the Unsold. It hits your empathy and lets brands look benevolent without changing volume. The reality begins in backrooms piled with last month's colorways and this week's returns. Some brands shred or incinerate to protect pricing. Most offload by the container to liquidators who buy by weight, not by item. The spreadsheet calls it diversion. The route map calls it displacement. Watch how a pallet moves. A returns hub flags thousands of units as unrecoverable. Wrong season, deodorant marks, twisted hems, mismatched dye lots. A broker bids on the lot, wraps it in plastic, and forwards it to a port. The bale lands in across Cantamanto Market, where traders take out high-interest loans just to slice the wires. The first 5 minutes decide their month. Roughly a third is sellable, a portion mendable, and a large remainder too damaged, too synthetic, or too niche to move. That last pile doesn't vanish. It slides into drains, fuels open burns, or stacks into mounds that smolder after rain. Microcene lives under a corrugated roof. Amma, a sorter, opens a bale labeled Women's Dresses Mixed. Out pours thin polyester bodycon pieces, promo tees, and mise-sewn seams. She sells what she can to keep the lender off her back. The rest becomes a problem she didn't create. When storms hit, fabric ropes choke gutters, floodwater climbs, cleanup crews push soggy piles toward dumps already at the brim. The neck labels still spell brands you scrolled past last night. Impact shows up on landscapes we pretend not to see. In Chile's Atacama Desert, mountains of unsold and second-hand clothes sit exposed, bleaching under sun, leaching dyes and microfibers into wind and sand. On beaches in West Africa, textile tangles wash ashore like seaweed heavy with plastic fibers. If donation were matching the avalanche, those piles would shrink. They grow because throughput grows. Lie 14 leans on faith in the future. Circular by 203. The promise sounds like engineering will save us. The problem is physics and scale. Most garments are blends, polycotton, elastin-laced knits, treated fabrics that don't separate cheaply. Fiber-to-fiber recycling exists in pilots. Some pure cotton turns into cellulose pulp. Some polyester depolymerizes back to pellets. But at volume, it's limited, energy-intensive, and picky about input. Take-back boxes collect more than systems can truly cycle. So brands pledge big, run small trials, and keep output rising. Walk through a take-back flow. A store box fills. A truck hauls bags to a sorter. Zippers, buttons, and mixed fibers tank fiber-to-fiber rates. A tiny slice gets upcycled into novelty drops, some downcycles into wiping rags or insulation. Much is baled and exported again. The loop didn't close, it widened, spreading waste across borders under a greener name. True circularity would mean designing for disassembly, tracking materials, and actually remaking fibers at scale while making fewer units. Without caps and per item footprints trending down, circular by 203 is a vibe, not a plan. There's a number you never see on a hang tag, end-of-life probability. If a garment's blend and construction make recycling unlikely, the honest label would say landfill or incineration risk, high. Instead, we get slogans. The fix isn't another box in a lobby. It's fewer SKUs, durable builds, standardized trims, and fiber choices that future mills can actually digest. Life 15 hides in plain sight. Your returns are restocked. Free returns feel like a right, and for high-value items, restocking can make sense. For ultra-cheap fashion, the math breaks fast. Processing, unpacking, inspecting, steaming, rebagging, retagging often costs more than the item's value. So returns flow to consolidators, palletize into mixed lots, and enter the same export pipeline donation rides. The click felt reversible. The waste was. A day in a returns hub moves in seconds. Workers are scored on units per minute. Tags ripped, seams stretched, deodorant shadows. Each piece gets a snap judgment. Shelf, rework, liquidate. Most fast fashion lands in the last two. Barcodes vanish under stickers. Your no harm done moment becomes inventory for someone else's gamble. Impact ripples through air and water. Each pass adds transport miles and packaging. Each bale exported increases the odds that low-quality stock swamps local sellers and becomes municipal waste. Cities with thin sanitation budgets shoulder costs brands never booked. Meanwhile, influencers normalize the churn with try-on hauls that treat multi-size orders and mass returns as savvy shopping. The algorithm rewards the pile on the couch. Downstream, the pile grows into a hill, a 20-second human beat from a port. A crane operator watches containers of used clothes arrive week after week. He recognizes the logos now. He doesn't follow trends, he follows schedules. The smell, damp textile and perfume clings to the air. His job is to stack the problem, not to solve it. Here's the tell. If a brand claims donation as default, ask for audited volumes and destinations. If it touts circularity, ask about fiber composition, actual fiber-to-fiber rates, and per-item footprints. If it promises restocking, ask for return-to-shelf percentages and proof of domestic processing. Without receipts, donate. Circular and restocked are stage directions. The landfill illusion doesn't make waste disappear. It changes its name, its route, and its audience. Lies 16 to 18. Labor lies and the wage trap. The waste piles told one truth, wages told another. Lie 16 sounds tidy on a website. We pay living wages. The stakes aren't abstract. They're rent, rice, uniforms, medicine. On payday, the phrase collapses into the legal minimum, not a local living benchmark. In Dhaka, Tirupur, Ho Chi Minh City, the posted rate often covers half a basic family budget. The shortfall becomes overtime, debt, or skipped meals. Living wage becomes a slogan that means minimum wage, and the gap gets handed to the person at the machine. What this feels like in a household is math you can't win. A sewing operator paid by the piece chases quota to catch a small efficiency bonus that can cover groceries. If she slows, needle jam, thread break, earnings drop below rice price for the week. Rent ticks up, fuel spikes, a school asks for exam fees. Overtime shifts from option to obligation. She doesn't call it wage theft when the bonus vanishes over a vague quality issue. She calls it Tuesday. Action shifts on the contract side. Lie 17 hides behind a shrug. We don't own factories. The stakes are accountability. By buying from independent suppliers, brands move liability an ocean away. Codes of conduct read strong in PDFs. Enforcement lives in a maze of agents, Tier 1 cut-and-sew plants and Tier 2 4 mills nobody sees on a hang tag. When violations surface, a buyer can exit the supplier faster than a floor can change. The problem moves, the harm stays. Walk the subcontract chain and the dodge shows. A flagship factory hosts audits and photo tour, clean floors, exits stenciled, badges aligned. When orders spike, it outsources to smaller workshops, sometimes informal, sometimes unregistered, where per-piece rates drop and days stretch. Labels and packing slips flow through the flagship, so the paperwork looks clean. Workers in the satellite rooms stitch the same brand names for less, invisible to the audit calendar. If a scandal breaks, the brand says, "Not our factory." The seams tell another story. Lie 18 arrives with clipboards. Audits passed. The stakes are trust and time. Audits can help, but predictable ones become theater. Management knows the checklist. Extinguishers on walls, evacuation plans posted, young faces off the floor, time cards aligned to legal hours, payroll books corrected the week before. Interviews happen on site with translators paid by management. Meanwhile, systems that matter. Grievance channels workers' trust, freedom to organize without retaliation. Payslips that match envelopes, stay off stage. A micro-story shows the gap. An auditor asks a row of women if they ever worked past 6. Heads shake. Outside, a street vendor counts foil dinners he sells at 10. Supervisors had coached answers and collected duplicate time cards. The audit report will say no excessive overtime observed. The brand files it as proof. The line starts again. Stakes escalate when timelines compress. A buyer pulls a 2-week lead time on a complex style to hit a drop window. Managers flip to per-piece pay, knowing quotas demand speed. Needle changes get skipped, oiling slows, guards sit loose. A needle snaps, nicking skin, the line keeps moving because time equals pay. When the shipment goes out late, the brand deducts a penalty. Management recoups it by trimming attendance bonuses. Wage theft gets buried under performance deduction. Meanwhile, across town, organizers pass out pamphlets on legal rights. The next morning, a rumor spreads. Signers won't get renewal. Supervisors reassign the loudest voices to worse lines. A week later, a drill locks doors until a rush order finishes. The brand's policy forbids retaliation. The message on the floor is clearer than any policy: keep quiet and sew. The impact isn't just moral, it's structural. Low wages push speed over quality to hit quota. Corners get cut, stitch density drops, bar tacks vanish, thread quality dips. The skipped steps show up as crooked hems and popped seams, the very defects used to dock pay and demand discounts from the factory. It's a loop. Low price drives low wage drives corner cutting creates defects, defects justify penalties, penalties push wages lower. 3 days earlier, a shipment cleared Lowe's Angels. In downtown warehouses, seamstresses, many immigrant women worked under contractor setups that paid by the piece. California passed SB 62 to curb that and ensure hourly pay. Compliance exists on paper, enforcement lags in practice. Some contractors still set rates so low that the effective wage is a few dollars an hour. We don't own factories, travels domestically too. There's another crack: cancellations. When demand dips or a crisis hits, brands invoke clauses to cancel finished orders. Factories delay wages, take loans, or shut. Workers have already done the labor. The money evaporates in a paragraph they never saw. Campaigns pressure brands to pay up. Some do, many don't. Risk stays at the bottom by design. So how do these lies hold? Distance, paperwork, and pace. Living wage without country and role-specific benchmarks isn't a wage, it's a wish. We don't own factories without joint liability is an exit plan. Audits passed without unannounced visits, worker-led monitoring, and binding remediation is stagecraft. The fix isn't another code or a glossy training. It's enforceable agreements that tie brand money to outcomes. Wage floors pegged to living benchmarks, recognized unions on the floor, safe hours with records workers control, and consequences when timelines squeeze safety. A human pivot seals it. A line leader in DACA uses a real grievance channel backed by a binding accord. A retaliatory supervisor moves because the contract requires it. A payslip shows a new rate because brands agreed to purchasing practices that match the wage. Proof, wires sent, doors open, hours posted and kept, speaks louder than any slogan. Lies 19 and 20. Speed and the drop machine. Lie 19 sounds futuristic. Real-time fashion. The pitch says data finally matches demand, so waste shrinks and creativity thrives. Stakes are everything behind the screen, hours on sewing lines, chemistry in dye rooms, and the thin margin for safety. Action starts in a windowless studio where a trend analyst watches dashboards spike around a sleeve shape and a hex code. A CAD technician lifts an old pattern, strips darts to cut stitch minutes, and fires files to a shared queue spanning multiple suppliers. By evening, cutting tables hum. The first 100 units ship before a designer prints the mood board. From your side, it's magic. Tuesday's scroll becomes Friday's cart, but speed compresses every buffer others rely on. Fabric lead times don't obey clicks, so factories grab whatever stock sits close. Substitute linings, cheaper zippers, finishes that flash under LEDs and fail under a bus strap. Needle changes get skipped to meet a midnight truck. Quality checks narrow to visuals. Real time becomes code for no time. Meanwhile, the algorithm learned to copy. Scrapers pull silhouettes from marketplaces. Image-to-pattern software approximates pieces. Fit gets reverse-engineered from photo folds and try-ons. Indie designers see their week-old blouse reappear, minus darts, minus ethics, minus credit, priced below their original yardage. The platform celebrates trend velocity. The person who sketched it calls it theft. Here's a human beat. At 2 a.m., a supervisor's phone buzzes. Advance ship 600 by noon. Per piece pay kicks in. Operators stack coffee cups and sew until thumbs go numb. A needle snaps, a fragment nicks skin. The line doesn't stop because floor time equals rent. The parcel leaves on time. Returns will come back later, a shadow invoice paid by someone else's wrists and lungs. Impact unfolds fast. The drop hits, your comments beg for restocks, and dashboards flag momentum. A second batch launches. The trend dies 2 days later. Unsold units slip into permanent markdowns or pallets bound for liquidation. The promise was precision. The outcome was acceleration of copies of work of waste. Speed doesn't just rush people, it strains systems. Dye houses swap recipes to hit darker shades faster, risking fixation that pushes chemicals into effluent when treatment tanks are already loaded. Maintenance windows shrink, membranes foul, night bypasses creep in. Safety drills become later because lead time eats the calendar. Real time rewards whoever can sprint, not whoever can do it right. Lie 20 reframes the engine as restraint. Demand-led production. The claim says, we only make what you want when you want it. Credibility is the stake. The action starts with seeding microbatches to flood feeds and manufacture proof of demand. Early units function as paid advertising. Small losses are chalked up as marketing. Heat maps nudge up sells. Countdowns simulate scarcity. Restocks chase yesterday's curve. That's not demand-led, it's demand-manufactured. Returns become a feedback weapon. Every click, linger, and refund trains the model on what to clone next and which corners to cut. If a sleeve binds but the photo hides it, conversion stays acceptable and the spec doesn't improve. If reviews note chemical smell, the batch relabels and reroutes to a different marketplace, a different promise, while the algorithm keeps the silhouette live. The data doesn't care who made it or who coughed, it cares that a cart completed. A 20-second micro story. A small brand posts a hand-loomed cardigan with slow-made texture. 2 days later, a grid of near matches floods a platform at 1/10 the price. Her pre-orders collapse. She files a takedown. The marketplace asks for registrations and court orders she can't afford. The copies ride the "you might also like" rails to her followers. Creativity becomes free R&D for a factory she'll never meet. From the platform's perspective, everything hums. Average order value inches up, ad spend per sale drops, sell-through looks clean because slow movers get buried under new tiles. From the worker's perspective, weeks blur, wrists burn, and missing quota means losing a shift. From the river's perspective, baths still discharge when orders spike. From yours, the dopamine lands, then lands again. Demand-led would look different. Transparent minimum lead times posted per category. Per drop waste disclosed, units made, sell-through, returns, liquidation, export, caps on total SKUs per season, forecast sharing and on-time payments so suppliers don't bankroll rushes. When those receipts appear, the phrase means something. Without them, demand-led is just the drop machine with better PR. Here's the tell to watch in your feed. If speed headlines the story but proof sits missing, no lead times, no per-drop waste, no supplier maps beyond cut and sew, you're looking at acceleration dressed as innovation. If a brand claims they only make what you ask for, ask to see what they didn't sell. Real demand-led shows its misses and slows its calendar. Everything else is cadence with a smile. Lies 21 and 22. The influencer Mirage. While the drop machine sprinted, a new chorus gave it a friendly face. Lie 21 arrives with a smile and a discount code. Ethical collab. The stakes are your trust and the halo you lend with every like. A creator unboxes a capsule they designed, talks about responsible sourcing, and tour a flagship factory where floors gleam and exits are painted bright. Their experience is real, the edit is selective. The capsule is a rounding error. The core line, the thousands of SKUs arriving daily, still sets the pace, the chemistry, and the calendar. Behind the feed, the choreography is tight. The brand isolates one line for the tour, certified cotton, traceable trims, audit binders stacked by the door. Unknown to the creator, a subcontracted floor across town is pushing late-night shifts to meet the same launch window the collab will anchor. The footage looks sincere because the tour was clean. Scale remains off-camera by design. Impact lands where marketing can't reach. A personal recommendation beats a billboard. Viewers buy the capsule, then slide one tile over to grab the $6 top and $9 skirt, sharing the cart. Search lifts for the creator's pieces and for the mainline. When critics raise questions, the brand points back to the collab as proof of intent. The halo becomes a shield. Meanwhile, purchase orders look exactly like last quarter's, fast, thin, and big. There's a DM that says it all. Is the whole brand ethical now? The creator hesitates, posts a careful reply about steps in the right direction, and links a code. They meant it. The comments flood with hearts and checkout screenshots. Off camera, a manifest lists 11 containers of core stock touching down the same week. The capsule will sell out in days. The core will move for months. If credibility mattered more than vibes, Collabs would carry receipts. SKU-level footprints, wage verification, lead time standards, and an agreement tying the brand to living wages and safe hours across the line, not just the capsule. Some creators ask, most get a glossy PDF and a flight. The algorithm rewards frequency, not due diligence. The halo keeps shining. Lie 22 plays the audience back to itself. Hauls are harmless fun. A ring light clicks on, 30 items spill across a couch, and try-ons quick cut from meh to obsessed. 4 don't fit, 3 are almost, 2 have loose seams, the rest are keep for now. The math hides in the format. Volume reads as entertainment. Free returns erase friction and turn overbuying into a skill. The pile becomes content. The label on the neck becomes someone else's problem. Meanwhile, invoices run on a different logic. The brand pays flat fees or commissions through affiliate links. Creators aren't paid to keep, they're paid to convert. Authenticity, even the misses, boosts watch time, and watch time boosts sales. The meh-s sell the wow-s. Boxes on the floor fill with garments too cheap to restock. They'll do the liquidation loop you've already met. A human beat sharpens the gap. A viral $300 haul equals roughly a month's wage for a garment worker in a low-cost hub. The video doesn't frame it that way. Why would it? It's playing the platform's game. Novelty plus speed equals growth. A code expires at midnight. Timers tick. Viewers race a clock that exists to train racing. Impact compounds. Hauls normalize multi-size orders and mass returns, reset what normal looks like, and teach younger viewers that buying bundles is literacy. The algorithm feeds the reflex. The warehouse pays the bill. Downstream, pallets stack into someone else's storm drain. Creators talk off camera about the squeeze. Say no to a fast fashion check and watch your inbox fade. Rent is due. A week later, a different brand with softer language offers a collab and a tour. The PDF looks solid, the itinerary is curated, and the code is generous. They sign, add a disclaimer about mindful consumption, and hit publish. The audience applauds the honesty. The cart clicks anyway. There's a better version. If brands want credibility, they tie collabs to binding commitments. Wage agreements with joint liability, unannounced audits with worker interviews off-site, lead times that protect safety, and per item impact labels that drop each season. If creators want to keep trust, they disclose everything: rates, gifts, affiliate cuts, set conditions. No neutral without cuts, no recycled without end of life, and insist the core line steps too. Viewers can help by treating hauls as red flags and asking for receipts. Country, fiber, wage verification, per item footprints, end-of-life plan. Influence can open eyes or move product. Right now, it mostly moves product. The Mirage works because it borrows a human voice. Pull the lens back and you'll see the same machine, speed, volume, distance, wearing better lighting. Lies 23 and 24. The compliance curtain. After the hauls and halos, the paperwork arrives like armor. Lie 23 sounds airtight. We're fully compliant. The stakes are legal teeth and public trust. The action happens in conference rooms where lawyers map risk against penalty. most sourcing countries, labor and environmental rules lag reality, and when fines land, they're tiny next to a quarter's profit. Compliance becomes a ceiling to crouch under, not a floor to stand on. Here's how it plays. A brand touts alignment with national laws at supplier sites. Fire exits, maximum hours, minimum pay, discharge limits. On paper, it looks safe. In practice, the minimum wage trails living costs by years. Overtime caps bend under peak season exemptions. Effluent permits renew with signatures, not upgrades. If enforcement shows up, a modest fine changes hands and lines restart. Compliant reads like safe. It often means legal, not fair. Meanwhile, something else tightened at the border. Import bans now target products linked to forced labor or specific high-risk regions. The U.S. Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act changed the tone. Containers get detained, paperwork is requested, brands swear off risky zones. Supply chains respond like water, labels shift, orders route through intermediaries, fiber blends muddy origin. A blocked shipment reappears with different paperwork, without fiber tracing, mill mapping, and credible custody of materials. The curtain stays closed while goods flow. Modern slavery acts add another layer of theater. Companies publish statements condemning forced labor and describing due diligence, UK-style disclosures that satisfy a checkbox. The law often requires the statement, not outcomes. There's no binding duty to pay back wages, cut volume, or fix purchasing practices that spawn the risk. The document updates annually. The math stays the same. Data helps hide the gap. Tier 1 factories, the cut-and-sew plants that host auditors, get mapped, photographed, and listed. It looks transparent because the front door is tidy. Tier 2, 3, and 4, the mills, spinners, ginners, chemical suppliers, live off-camera behind trade secret claims. Ask about the yarn spinner or the dye recipes supplier, and the trail dissolves into confidentiality. If harm happens upstream, responsibility evaporates into fog. Auditors, insurers, and certifiers build a market around the curtain. Pre-announced inspections, social compliance badges, management system certifications that confirm a policy exists, not that power exists for workers to use. The footer fills with logos until it looks like a sash. Inside the factory, a worker still whispers to a cousin about a supervisor who withholds pay when quotas slip. Microscene shows the problem. A fire breaks out in a cutting room stacked tight with fabric rolls. The plant passed an audit last month. Extinguishers hung where they should, exits were stenciled on walls. On the day of the fire, production overflow blocked the back door because space was tight and orders were heavy. No one moved the rolls because floor time equals wages. The report after notes clutter, training gaps, corrective action planned. The brand cites its robust compliance program. Families plan funerals. Fully compliant also hides chemistry. Discharge permits can set concentration limits per liter while ignoring total volume. A mill that recycles 80% of its water can still release more pollutants in aggregate than a smaller neighbor because its output dwarfs the frame. Compliance satisfied the letter. The river never got the memo. Lie 24 dresses up the numbers. Transparency reports. The stakes are clarity and accountability. The action is curation. Brands publish supplier lists and impact dashboards with totals, tons of more sustainable cotton, factory counts, workers trained. It reads like progress because numbers feel solid. What's missing are intensities and verifications. Emissions per garment, liters per kilogram, wage versus local living benchmarks by role and region, and binding targets that force those numbers down while volume caps hold growth in check. A report might boast 95% of Tier 1 disclosed. Good, then what? Are overtime hours down across sewing lines in Vietnam? Are wastewater chemical oxygen demand figures falling year over year in dye houses in Turapur? Did knit operators in Dhaka meet a published living wage benchmark verified by off-site worker interviews and payslip sampling? Without those receipts, transparency becomes glossy opacity. There's a human beat that won't fit on a dashboard. A young compliance officer believes in the work. She assembles the supplier map, pushes for unannounced audits, drafts stronger purchasing practices. When she proposes tying lead times to living wage costs so suppliers can pay fairly, the merchandiser says the calendar won't budge. She rolls out a grievance training. Months later, a union organizer sends photos of retaliation. She escalates. Legal replies, "We're compliant." Regulators are waking up. EU due diligence rules, tighter standards on green claims, lawsuits challenging carbon-neutral talk built on offsets. Customs is learning fiber tracing. Courts are asking for proof, not prose. That pressure matters, but but compliance without consequence is theater. Transparency without teeth is a brochure. If a brand wants credibility, here's the test. Publish SKU-level footprints, coat-we per garment, liters per kilogram, verified wages versus local living benchmarks, trended down on a schedule, disclose Tier 2 for suppliers and independent effluent tests, sign binding agreements that make you jointly liable for wages and safety, fund fixes with escrow, not promises, align lead times and payment terms with the conditions you claim to support. If not, the curtain stays closed and the show goes on. Lie 25. The consumer blame shift. After 24 lies, the neatest one lands in your lap. It's your fault, just buy less. The stakes are moral weight and misdirection. The action is calculated. Brands frame overconsumption as a personal failing while their systems engineer demand. Timers tick, drops surge, returns feel free, and the lecture arrives. Be responsible. It's tidy because it absolves the only actors with levers big enough to change the math. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You can thrift, mend, and stretch wares, and it helps, but you can't thrift your way out of industrial overproduction. The volume problem starts before your cursor moves. Assortments are padded with microvariants to juice choice. Duplicates cover every color code. New tiles arrive daily so yesterday looks stale. Choice overload resolves through the cheapest dopamine. Your restraint dents the pace. It doesn't rewrite the code. The design of the storefront tells on itself. Only 3 left. Cart reserved for 10 minutes. Buy 2, free shipping. Final hour. Those nudges aren't decoration, they're behavioral levers tuned to loss aversion and urgency. Recommendation rails mirror hues you lingered on. When you hesitate, a coupon lands like permission. If you try to exit, items sell out, then reappear once you commit. The path of least resistance points to add to bag. Responsibility gets pushed downstream after the conversion. Meanwhile, in a boardroom, teams run A/B tests on anchor pricing, thumbnail crops, and urgency copy. Returns aren't a cost to minimize, they're a data set to sharpen conversion. Every bad purchase improves the next pitch. Blame the buyer and the optimization stays clean. Blame the cadence, the margin structure, the timeline, and you'd have to slow the loop. A 20-second dorm room beat makes it real. A student builds a cart, dumps it, rebuilds, dumps again. A push notification offers 15% off just for you. The win feels earned. They check out, return half, and forget the rest in a drawer. That night they watch a minimalism video and feel guilty. The brand logs a successful session and a rising lifetime value score. The guilt belongs to one person. The success belongs to a system. Impact shows up where the lecture never points. Workers eat penalties for cancellations. Cities manage waste streams from returns priced too low to process. Rivers catch chemicals when rush orders strain treatment. Buy less floats above those realities and conveniently costs brands nothing. When advocates demand per item footprints, caps on units, and joint liability for wages, the conversation pivots back to consumer education. So what has teeth? Levers at design, purchasing, and policy. Fewer SKUs built to be repaired. Public per garment impact labels, coat-we per piece, liters per kilogram of fabric, wage verification against local living benchmarks, published at launch and trended down. Volume caps that limit total units per season. Lead times that match safe production. Payment terms that don't push factories to bankroll risk. Executive bonuses tied to absolute emissions and living wage coverage. Not unit growth. There's a human pivot worth holding. A line leader in DACA files a grievance on Wednesday and sees a retaliatory supervisor moved by Friday, not because a poster said so, but because a binding agreement with penalties made it unavoidable. A dye house manager runs treatment at peak season because discharge tests are public and fines stick. A designer adds seam allowance and standardized zippers because repairability is a KPI. None of that happens because one person skipped a haul. It happens because pressure moved from wallets to rules. Consumers still matter, just differently than the blame script suggests. Use collective leverage, not private guilt. Commit publicly to wear targets, track wear so the algorithm and your own habits reinforce each other, and make repair first your default. Treat hauls as red flags. Ask for receipts on camera, where it was made, what's in it, the wage benchmark met or missed, the per item footprint, the end-of-life plan. Favor brands that mend in-house and prove take-back outcomes with audited rates and domestic processing, not coupons and export bails. Here's the response when a brand says, "We're listening, tell us to make less." Answer with metrics, per item footprints, living wage verification by role and region, season-by-season unit caps, supplier maps beyond cut and sew, wastewater tests with COD, conductivity, and pH posted, return-to-shelf percentages that beat liquidation. If the receipts don't arrive, you've learned something too. They want the story to end with your conscience. Don't give them the ending. Push the weight back where the levers live. The turning point, cracks in the system. While brands perfected the script, pressure finally found levers. The first crack came from policy with teeth. Cities floated extended producer responsibility, fees per item sold, ring-fenced for sorting, recycling trials, and cleanup, with penalties if outcomes weren't verified. Suddenly, spreadsheets modeled waste not as PR but as cost. Volume stopped looking free. A merchandiser stared at a margin line that now included the back end they'd ignored for years. Right to repair nudged from gadgets to garments. Lawmakers asked, if you can't mend it, do you own it? Pilots required parts on hand, zippers, buttons, thread shades, and repair manuals posted like any user guide. Checkout pages added repair credits next to discount codes. Returns dipped where repair counters opened, not because people turned saintly, but because fixing became the easy default. Service teams learned to rebind necklines as quickly as printing a label. Courts started trimming green language. Lawsuits challenged neutral shipping, built on offsets and closed-loop claims without material outcomes. Settlements forced brands to retire words or attach receipts. Marketing lost its best fog machine. Customs got sharper too. Fiber tracing and mill mapping met import bans aimed at forced labor. Rerouting on paper stopped working when shipments were detained and questions survived the label swap. We don't own factories. Couldn't wave away custody of cotton and yarn. A few brands tried experiments that mattered because they cut against habit. Design quotas limited SKUs, prioritized repeats over weekly tiles, and required seam allowances for future mends. Season calendars stretched. New became back repairable. Procurement stopped defaulting to virgin. Verified post-industrial fibers, deadstock trims, and mills financed for real wastewater treatment, not a photo op. Deposit schemes showed up. Pay $5 now, get it back when you return the garment for verified domestic reprocessing. Coupons turned into collateral. Worker-led wins pushed from the other side. Organizers in supplier hubs secured recoveries for wage theft, and more importantly, binding accords that made brands jointly liable for safety and pay, escrow for remediation. Independent monitors workers could actually call, unannounced inspections with off-site interviews. In Dhaka, a line leader filed a grievance on Wednesday and watched a retaliatory supervisor moved by Friday because a contract required it. In Los Angeles, piece rate abuses met SB 62 backed by penalties that stuck, and workrooms recalibrated what compliance had to mean. Meanwhile, transparency evolved from glossy totals to measurable intensities. A handful of companies published SKU-level labels, coatwe per garment, liters per kilogram, verified wage benchmarks met or missed, plotted to fall on a schedule. Reports included per drop waste, units made, sell-through, returns, liquidation, export. When those numbers headed down while volumes capped, skepticism softened. Investors noticed a different risk. Unit growth without cleanup turned into regulation, litigation, and seizure exposure. On riverbanks, proof replaced tour. Mills posted weekly discharge results, chemical oxygen demand, conductivity, pH at the gate and online, with third-party labs cross-checking. Managers invited unchaperoned visits in peak season, not just in the slow months. Treatment ran even when orders surged. Fines had bite and losing a buyer had certainty. Operators started celebrating stable meters as much as perfect shade cards. There were still games. Some rebranded old practices as innovation. Some launched repair as a photo op with no parts in stock. Some bought offsets while starving treatment plants of capital. But the distance between talk and consequence narrowed where fees, seizures, lawsuits, and binding agreements sat in the room. Executive bonuses tied to unit growth began to look like legal risk. Boards asked a once unthinkable question. What if we earn more by selling less and servicing longer? Quiet human moment marks the shift. In a mall store, a clerk takes a torn pocket, prints a repair ticket instead of a return label, and hands over a loaner needle kit along with a slot at the weekend men bar. The customer shrugs, then nods. 2 months later, the pocket still holds. Across town, a dye house manager points at a live dashboard during August rush. The numbers hold steady, and the discharge report matches the independent test online. Pride moves from story to system. None of this is a miracle. It's friction aligned. Fees on waste, rights to repair, lawsuits on claims, seizures at borders, and contracts that bite turned slogans into deliverables. Cracks widened where pressure stayed specific, public, and verified. The machine didn't change its nature, the rules changed its options. Proof, not poetry, started to set the pace. Playbook exposed how the lies work together. Start at the rack and trace the current. The price tag lands first, $39 slashed to $19, so your brain logs a win before you touch the fabric. That anchor meets quality theater. Plush handfeel, tested badges, true to size copy. The cheap feels premium just long enough to pass the mirror test, and that moment bridges to impulse. Flimsy construction guarantees churn. The churn keeps prices low and newness high. Markdowns complete the loop by turning loss into luck. Green halos cushion every click. Conscious, Capsules crown a catalog that didn't slow. Recycled rides blends that won't recycle. Neutral shipping leans on offsets while planes and trucks keep burning fuel. The labels quiet the twinge the price-quality trick created, so you forgive a popped seam and try again. Guilt down, cart up. Fit chaos is a feature, not a bug. True-to-size masks yield games that nudge patterns millimeter by millimeter, so you order 3 sizes just in case. Front-end volume spikes, back-end returns surge. Most of those returns won't return to shelves. They'll liquidate, export, or smolder elsewhere. To you, the process feels generous. Free shipping, free labels. To the system, it's a gold mine of data training the next drop. Speed turns that pattern into muscle memory. Real-time fashion compresses design and production so novelty lands on cue. Screens scrape silhouettes. Patterns get stripped to shave stitch minutes. Cutting lines sprint. Rushes skip needle changes, strain treatment lines, and shrink safety buffers to hours. The drop engine converts your curiosity into someone else's overtime, and a river's odd tint after rain. Influence amplifies the beat. A collab plants credibility while the core line hums on. Halls normalize bulk buying and mass returns as entertainment. The misses sell the hits. Affiliate links convert skepticism to commission. Free returns convert doubt to data. The creator's sincerity becomes a sales tool that stitches your trust to throughput, not to proofs. When cracks appear, wage theft, neon canals, the curtain lifts paperwork. Fully compliant means legal minimums in countries where minimums trail living costs. Transparency means totals without intensities, maps without mills, and training without power. If a scandal breaks, labels shift, suppliers rename, and audits reset. The machine digests the shock and keeps tempo. Offsets mask emissions, donation masks dumping. A take-back bin trades a coupon for your conscience. A forestry credit balances a split shipment that doubled packaging miles. Both gestures can help in narrow lanes. In practice, they smooth impulse while scale grows. Zoom in on the money. Planned obsolescence fuels repeat purchases. Repeat purchases justify markdown theatrics. Markdowns unlock conversion. Returns feed datasets. Datasets sharpen the next obsolescence. Margins live in microcuts. Stitch density trimmed. Seam allowances squeezed. Cheaper interlinings. Skipped maintenance. Postponed treatment. Pressed wages. Shareholder payouts ride the spread between the promise advertised and the lifespan engineered. Now watch how responsibility travels. Buy better points at you. We don't own factories, points away from them. Audits passed points to paper. Circular by 203 points at time. Every arrow avoids the lever. Fewer SKUs, slower calendars, wage floors verified against local benchmarks. Discharge data public and enforced, per item footprints falling while volumes capped. Without those, the default setting, move money, not clothes, stays locked. Meanwhile, micro-optimizations hum. Markers squeeze millimeters. Vanity sizing sugarcoats shrunken tolerances. Countdown timers lift conversion. Restock pings simulate scarcity. Review prompts bury the specific under floods of 5 stars. Tiny frictions flip to accelerators, and your path to place order feels self-chosen when it's a maze with one exit. Here's the tell the system hopes you miss. Every lie props another. Price primes, quality fails, green calms, speed accelerates, influence persuades, compliance shields, offsets absolve, returns disappear. The result isn't chaos, it's choreography. And unless rules rescore the music. Fees on waste, rights to repair, joint liability for wages, border checks with fiber tracing, SKU-level impact labels that fall on schedule. The show repeats on time, every time one soft T and one hard bill at a time. What actually helps? Action with teeth. Pulled the curtain. Now make the levers move. Start with money tied to people, not promises. Support binding wage agreements and enforceable safety accords that make brands jointly liable for pay and conditions in supplier factories. When agreements include escrow for remediation, on-time payments, neutral third-party monitors workers can actually call, and automatic penalties, envelopes change. A sewing operator in Dhaka shouldn't need a hashtag to get back wages. The contract should wire it. Push per item receipts into daylight. SKU-level impact labels at launch. Kotwi per garment, liters per kilogram of fabric, verified wages against local living benchmarks by role and region, then a schedule to bring those numbers down. Totals are easy to pad, intensities are hard to fake. Require independent verification and year-over-year charts that face down while volumes cap. If the line adds 10 new pieces, cut 10 elsewhere. Change purchasing practices where harm starts. Set minimum lead times by category, denim, tailoring, knit basics that protect needle changes, maintenance, and wastewater treatment windows. Publish them. Pay on time and share forecasts so suppliers aren't bankrolling rushes with high-interest loans. When demand drops, honor finished goods invoices or negotiate with worker pay protected first. Tie executive bonuses to absolute emissions, living wage coverage rates, and verified reductions in units, not unit growth. Designed for repair as a standard, not a stunt. Build seam allowances you can unpick, stitch densities that can be reinforced, and standardized zippers and buttons stocked for years. Publish repair manuals like user guides, and open in-house mend bars that fix popped seams, rebalance necklines, and replace hardware for a flat, posted fee. If a brand can print a return label in 20 seconds, it can print a repair ticket in 10. Fix water at the basin, not on the badge. Disclose dyeing and finishing suppliers and publish third-party discharge tests with chemical oxygen demand, conductivity, and pH weekly during peak season. Fund upgrades, membranes, evaporators, real sludge handling with long-term contracts and blended finance, then show meters running under pressure. If treatment pauses when orders spike, the claim doesn't count. Make waste cost what it is. Extended producer responsibility with teeth, fees per item sold, scaled by material risk and complexity, ring-fenced for municipal sorting, verified downcycling, and true fiber-to-fiber trials and cleanup, changes spreadsheets. Independent audits should follow money and material to destinations, not blog posts. A take-back bin isn't a loop without domestic processing targets and export caps. Close the border to paperwork games. Strengthen due diligence laws so brands are liable when fiber, yarn, or cut-and-sew links to forced labor. Pair seizures with fiber tracing, mill mapping, and sampling that survives label swaps. Repeat violators lose access to key markets until remediation and restitution land, paid to workers through mechanisms they control. Creators and platforms can pull too. If you take a collab, set conditions. Publish per SKU footprints, confirm living wage benchmarks via off-site interviews, disclose lead times, and tie the entire brand, not just the capsule, to those standards. Disclose affiliate rates, gifted items, and any offsets. Say no to neutral shipping unless emissions are falling in operations and logistics. Consumers aren't powerless, they're mise-aimed. Use collective pressure and commitment devices. Set a wear target before you buy 30 wears for basics, 10 for occasion, and log it so the algorithm and your habits reinforce each other. Install a microfiber filter or use a wash bag, wash cold, line dry. Default to repair, a 30-day cool-off before replacing, and 1 mend before a new purchase. Treat weekly drops and hauls as red flags. Ask for receipts in public. Country, fiber, wage benchmark met or missed, per item impact, and end-of-life plan with domestic processing rates. Here's the test that separates story from system. Fewer SKUs, slower calendars, binding wage floors, disclosed supplier tiers beyond cut-and-sew, wastewater numbers posted and stable in August, per item footprints trending down while volumes cap, and penalties that stick when promises break. If those show up, pressure worked. If not, you're buying adjective. The cheap shirt was never cheap. The bill landed in wages, rivers, and deserts carrying our logos. If you want proof, not PR, watch what happens when receipts hit sunlight and penalties bite. Now keep the pressure on, subscribe, share this with someone who still believes neutral shipping, and watch next to see how Accra and Atacama swallow our returns. Your attention funds the work.